Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Against Gravity. This is your podcast conversation that speaks to change makers, game changers, legacy builders. We get to know why they started the companies, why they started the businesses and projects that are really pushing the envelope in the industry they are in. Today, we are talking building valuable brands with Joe Mutuku. I'll introduce him in a short time. But before that, let me tell you that this podcast is powered by Picture, your Afrocentric visual content provider. So visit picturestock.com for all your visual needs. If you want images about Afrocentric people, Afrocentric communities in and outside of Africa that caters for Black people and Black culture, it's the place to be. Check out picturestock.com and get images for all your visual storytelling. Today we are talking building valuable brands with Joe Mutuku. But who is my guest? Joe embodies his enthusiastic Kenyan roots in everything he does. He's a driven entrepreneur, strategist, and educator, always searching for the next adventure. Joe is a co-founder of Crooked Space. What's the name? We'll find out what it is in a bit. It is a creative boutique agency in Nairobi, Kenya, that has served both SMEs and multinational corporations like USAID, Adrain, Shelter Freak, Barclays, Shona, and many more. Joe is an alumnus of the University of Nairobi, where he pursued a Bachelor's of Arts in Design. He spent more than 9 years, almost a decade, working in branding, marketing, and advertising, and has cultivated an in-depth understanding of the African market. He has the ability to co-create impactful brands by developing strategies for brand impact, quality control, consistency, and innovation. He seems like the right person to talk to about building valuable brands. Thanks for joining the Against Gravity podcast conversation for today, Joe. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
How's Nairobi?
Nairobi is good. Starting to get really cold, but Nairobi is really good. You should come sometime.
I think I should. And I've been following you on social media for over a year now. I'm so much intrigued, by your branding posts, your branding content every time. It's top notch. So today I really want to speak to you about building valuable brands. But before that, I think our listeners who want to get to know you, our viewers on YouTube, we also want to get to know you a bit more. So tell us about Joe Mutuku. Who are you?
I think you almost like read my full bio, but in a nutshell, I'm an entrepreneur. I am a branding coach. I'm a strategist. I am all those things. I help businesses understand what makes them special and kind of even help them tell the world about that specialness that they have. So sometimes I try to step away from a lot of branding jargon, but the simplest way I can say it is that I help businesses know what makes them special and then how to package that specialness and show it to the world so that they can connect with their audiences and just build valuable brands like you have said with your title.
Right. And I'm really interested in growing up. You know, it's like there are certain elements in our childhood that informs who we become. So I'm thinking, how was childhood like? Did you, know how to draw? Did you know how to do certain things that gave you an idea that you'll be in the creative industry?
Yeah, in a sense. I think my parents described me as a very creative kid. I used to entertain myself. Like I was good just being by myself and doing things by myself. I like to play drums. I also liked to draw. One of my fondest memories is of my dad. He used to let me, because when we would go to church with him, he used to carry a drawing book. So when I would sit there as he would listen to the sermon, I was there just drawing, and he would let me just draw the whole time. And then when I got home, I got to keep those drawings. then when I matured, it became something that was enjoyable to do. I remember I used to draw comics. I used to imitate a lot of comic artists in the newspaper. And then when I went to high school, there was an art and design course. I did that for a few years. So let's just say design and art was something that was a huge part of my upbringing. And so when I got to college and I had two offers from the university, one was requiring me to do law and the other one was requiring me to do design. So I am grateful that I didn't choose law because it would have been miserable. But yeah, I ended up in a design class. It ended up being one of the most special moments in my career because that's why I got to learn about what design is and how design can be used to communicate and even solve problems. And that's when I actually fell in love with the solving problems. So now I wasn't really interested in beautiful design. I was interested in solving problems. And so let's just say I stumbled into great mentors that were amazing thinkers and strategists. They kind of like brought me into that world where everything is strategic. And so marrying that with my love for design and learning about marketing, mixed bag that ended up producing the person that I am today. So
Right.
I am grateful for all those experiences, basically.
I'm thinking, does being a designer make it easier being like a branding expert? Do you think it's an essential to understand design to be a branding expert?
Yeah, it does make it easier. More and more as I go along, I learned that not just design, but copywriting is actually like the biggest skill. Because if you're able to use words to compel people to take a certain action, then if you marry that with good design, you are unstoppable and you can do anything. So I think anyone that has a background in design or copywriting is able to exist in a very good place in understanding what strategy is and how to intertwine that in entrepreneurship or marketing or branding and all those things.
Right. And at a point you started Crooked Space. Interesting name. I mean, I want to know what informed that name. And also it's a boutique agency in Nairobi that caters for SMEs, multinationals. And also how's the journey been so far? So what informed the name Crooked Space and how has that journey been so far as a branding agency?
Okay, so me and a friend of mine who we went to school with together, we actually met in campus, in our first year of campus, and we became great friends. So he went on his journey, his creative journey. He climbed the corporate ladder, and I did the same in a different environment. But what we were learning was kind of like similar, and the things that we wanted to do were very similar. So when we got to a point where we had climbed the ladders and there was no more climbing in the agency world, we decided, hey, why don't we start something that can exist in a space that is very unique, where we can help businesses understand the power of branding? Because what we realized is with the companies that we used to work for, we used to help people who would come from outside get into the country. And since we would help them with their brand strategy, they would take market share from the locals almost immediately. But the locals were very much focused on building their business, didn't really care about building their brand. So we said, why don't we try to help these people get into this space and be the solution for them, help these young players. And even because there are established businesses that we ended up working with that had zero brand, because guys, you need to understand that having a business and having a brand are two different things. You can have a very successful business and not have a brand. So in the process, we ended up helping a couple of people. Most of them were very successful. And so that's what we've been doing ever since. In terms of the name, Crooked Space, we intentionally weren't supposed to start an agency. It was supposed to be something else, but it was rooted from us being the kind of people that valued unorthodox ways or things that are not ordinary. We really wanted to move away from the conventional. Even how we do everything, most of our things are very upside down, down even to the colors that we use. We use black. Most people don't want to use black. The way we hire people is very different from what other agencies do. The way we even onboard clients, we don't do proposals, we don't do pitches. So our way of life is kind of like very upside down, even down to how we think. So we thought, why don't we make this our space? This is our space that is very crooked. And this is a space that we also allow the people that are interacting with us not to fit into a certain mold. They can just come the way that they are. We'll listen to them, we'll listen to their needs, and then we'll help them with the strategies that they need for them to succeed.
Great. You're listening to Against Gravity on all your favorite podcast platforms. My name is Henry Deben, and I'm speaking to Joe Mutuku, and we are talking building valuable brands. He's live from Kenya, giving us all the, wisdom nuggets already, telling us about his journey to starting Crooked Space. It's an agency that don't follow conventions. They don't follow the norm. So quite crooked. But let's really now focus on our theme for the podcast, building valuable brands. Joe, someone will ask, what is building a brand and why does it matter?
I've interacted with this question a lot, and the shortest way I can say that building a brand is valuable, it's because of one word, which is leverage. Building a brand gives you leverage. If someone walked into a room and said that their last name was Trump or was Clinton, you would treat them in a different way than someone else who had the last name that you didn't know or value. So that name is a brand that has given the person holding the name leverage. If you go to a store and you see a bag, and because it's a Gucci bag or it's a Louis Vuitton bag, it's 100 times what you would pay for in the street. The thing that makes that person have the confidence to put that price on that bag and have it bought is a brand. So it gives him leverage to be able to charge the prices that he wants to charge. If you don't have a brand, you don't have leverage. You're just like everyone else and you're competing on price. And if you ceased to exist tomorrow, no one would care or people would just move on. So, and that's why I said in the beginning that you can have a very successful business and not a brand, because if people can move on from you, let's say the taxi business, for example, it was a very good business, but then Uber came along and people moved on from the taxis. So it means that the taxis were good businesses, but they didn't really establish themselves as brands. If someone maybe had started a taxi and it was very unique and it stood out, then he's lucky. Maybe he stuck around. But if you were a business and you didn't build a brand, or you were purely just competing on the person with the ability to give people products at the cheapest price, when someone else comes and has an even cheaper price, then you're out. So basically the value of a brand is it gives you leverage. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting that you've been able to condense all the explanations into one word, leverage. And the examples I think are really relatable. That's quite interesting. And one of the interesting quotes, really the wild dream quotes, really simple, but when you think of it, it speaks volumes. You said not branding is branding in itself. I'm like, whoa. Me not branding myself, being intentional, being strategic about it is branding in itself. Break that down for us, and why are building brands of value necessary? You have a brand, but why should it be valuable as well?
Okay. Okay, those are two questions. I'm going to try to answer them separately. Okay, so the reason why I say not branding is still branding, it's because we as humans like to put people into categories and spaces that we can define. So let's say for you, Henry, if I meet you for the first time, I want to almost like give my brain a summary of who you are, right? So like, I'm gonna be very quick, maybe look at how you talk, how you dress, how you articulate yourself, how you, basically the environment around how you exist. And then I'm gonna make one big conclusion in my head about who Henry is, right?
Yeah.
So even if you didn't intend to give off any of those vibes, my brain still comes with a conclusion about who Henry is. So if and the Henry brand is the idea that I have in my head about who you are. So that's gonna happen regardless of whether you intentionally did had a lot of purpose in how you articulate yourself, how you dress, how you come across, the environment around how you interact. Even if you weren't strategic with all those things, I will still have a conclusion in my head about who you are. So that is why I'm saying that not branding is still branding. So the question is, Henry, would you rather I make a different conclusion about who you are than the one that you are, than the one that you truly are? Because if you're not strategically branding, you're leaving everyone to make interpretations about who you are. So I'm probably gonna say, you're approachable, you're very inviting, you're good energy, and someone that is I can talk to. And maybe tomorrow you're gonna come and you're not gonna give me all those vibes, and then I'm gonna think maybe you're very conservative and secretive and all those things. So the more complex you give me different energies or scenarios in our interactions, the more confused I am about what to say about who you are. And I might say a lot of different things. I'm never gonna be very singular in what I say about you. And so will everybody else. Everyone is just gonna have very subjective, not very clear interpretations of about who Henry is. But if Henry, you had very strategically, purposefully communicated to the world who you are through all your experiences, through how you speak, how you dress, how your Instagram page looks, how you communicate, how you send emails, all those things, then I'm gonna come up with one conclusion about who you are, and so will everybody else. So if we meet up and we're talking about Henry, we're all saying the same thing. And if we're all saying the same thing, it means that you have a very good brand. If we're meeting and we're saying a lot of different things about who you are, it means you have a very bad brand. So you can do the same for businesses. If someone thinks your business is awesome, another one thinks it sucks. If there's a lot of conflicts in what people think about your business, you have a bad brand. But if someone mentions the name of your company and everyone has a singular idea about who you are and what you represent, then you have a very valuable brand. Does any of that make sense?
It makes sense. So a valuable brand is having that consistent, perception in the minds of your target audience and market.
Yeah, and I did a test because in my masterclass I asked my students to describe the Oprah brand, And 90% of the time, they all say the same thing. They all say she is approachable, she is very generous, she is very motherly and warm, she is inspirational. They all say those things. No one has ever said anything outside of that. Why? Because Oprah has been able to communicate all those things throughout all her experiences. So it's the same thing with companies or people who want to build valuable brands. You need to be intentional in what you're communicating. You can't be today, you're saying, for example, myself, Joe, I'm a branding expert. And then if you go to my social media, I'm talking about cars. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about food. The other day I'm talking about shoes. Basically, I'm giving off a lot of different messages about who I am. No one is going to come to the conclusion that I'm a branding expert. So you need to stand for something and make sure that everything about who you are aligns to that thing, so that everyone can be able to come to that conclusion or that perception about who you are. And that is when now you're starting to build a valuable brand.
Great. Wow. That's so much to process. Joe Mutuku telling us what a valuable brand is here on Against Gravity with me, Henry Deben. We're talking building valuable brands. Joe, so I've established my business, or I'm in the process of establishing my business, and I want it to be a household brand. I want it to be seen. I want just the logo or even some colors to be seen, and people will say, okay, that is the brand. What do I need to be thinking of as an entrepreneur? What are the factors to consider when building a brand of value?
There are things that I call the fundamentals of what a brand is built on. So obviously, you're not going to be a household name tomorrow or the next day or even in 6 months, right? You need to know that it is a long process. What you need to know is that you need to be consistent in being able to communicate a single idea, right? Let me use an example of all the brands that you know. Coca-Cola. If I mention Coca-Cola, everyone thinks of Coke. If I mention Starbucks, everyone thinks of coffee, right? If I mention Tesla, everyone thinks of cars, right? So for you to become, you can't become a household name when you're doing, or when you want people to know you for doing 1,000 things. You become a household name for people knowing you for being able to do one thing really well, exceptionally well, right? So the first thing I would say to anyone that is starting a business and wants to be a household name, even Amazon didn't start by doing everything. They started with something and did it well, and then they expanded to other things. So you want to position yourself as someone that can be able to do one thing and do it very well, and let the whole world or your whole country know you for doing that one thing very well. That is how you become a household name. If you go into the route where every day you're doing something different, you're introducing new products, you're introducing new services, you're constantly adding things into who you are, people will never have a singular mindset about who you are and what you represent. So the first idea is, one, you need to start with one thing. The second thing is you need to define the things that I call the fundamentals. So I've been able to condense them into 4 things that you need to be very clear on, right? The first thing you need to be clear on is your brand purpose, your reason for existence. Unfortunately, if your reason for existence is to make money, forget about branding. Probably you're gonna hate a lot of stuff that I have to say anyway. So you just make your money and then exit. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to build something that would be bigger than you and even be a household name, then you need to understand why you started it in the first place. Like, is there any reason that propelled you to start that business, and be able to be very clear about what it is, because that is the thing that you want to make sure never changes about your brand. Okay, I'm just gonna go through them before I make this into a whole lecture. The second thing you need to define is your essence. So an essence, you can think of it as, what is the thing that makes you the person that does the things that you do, right? So are you a person that sells your products very cheaply, or you don't want to make money off of the people that you're serving? Why are you the kind of person that would do things like that? You need to identify the reason why, like the essence of who you are, because that is the thing that you want to bring out in all your product experiences. If I can give you an example of Apple, their essence is think different, right? So if that is at the core of who they are and what they do, the things they do, it is very easy to see why their products are the way that they are. They're different from everyone else. It's very easy to see why they don't sell their phones in third-party stores like everyone else does. They sell it through their own stores. It's very easy to see why they're the ones who started doing keynote presentations when they're launching their products. It's very easy to see why, instead of having a skyscraper office like everyone else, theirs looks like a spaceship that is very different from what everyone does. So you can see that being able to be true to their essence has set them apart from everyone else. So for your brand, you need to make sure that you have identified the thing that makes you you, and you try to bring it out in everything that you do. That is what's gonna make you special. The third thing is you need to understand your personality. You need to know, are you someone that is progressive? Are you someone that is conservative? Are you traditional in your thinking? Are you warm and approachable? Are you serious? Are you someone that is very stern and like you're very robotic in your responses? You need to understand what your personality is, because your company is a person. Think of it as a person that speaks and has a personality. So you will need to reflect that in your business as well. And then the last thing, and I think even the most valuable thing you need to define, is your values. And your values is not only what you do, but also what you don't do. You need to be very clear about the things that you do. Don't be like that every other company that I see with banners in their notice board of core values, and they have integrity. They always have integrity in there. They always have teamwork. Don't do that. Define values that are core to who you are. So for example, a value can even be cleanliness. Cleanliness can be a value. It can be a company that values cleanliness. It can be a company that values simplicity or minimalism or sustainability. Those are actual values. Don't have values like the ones every corporate business puts in their wall, which they never really embody. You want to have real values that represent who you are as a business.
Wow, and that brings me to my next question, because I was about to say that. I mean, on paper, you get people with so many values: responsibility, integrity, and whatnot, so many of these. But when you actually engage them in a service, it's in contrast, total contrast to what they are purporting to stand for. How dangerous is that for a brand when you have value statements that are different from the service you're actually providing, the touch points with your customers? It's in contrast to those values.
It is extremely dangerous, and I will actually tell you that almost all companies that I saw that have those lists of values, do not embody any of them. Zero. Like, it's on paper, it's that way, but when you actually get to interact with them, they do not embody all of those things. So one, it's kind of, it works against you. You'd rather not say that you have them, because you're kind of like being held to a standard. If you say that you're a person of integrity, and then you are a person who, let me even give you a scenario that happened to us. I know my co-founder is gonna laugh at this. So we were working for this company, and they had all these values, and we were helping them with their strategy. And even when they were bringing us in, they were very stern in making sure that our paperwork was correct. We had all our tax documents and stuff like that. And then when we started working deeper with them, we realized that the things they required of us, they didn't even have them themselves. So it was very shocking. And we kind of like no longer held them to the same standard. And now their brand was compromised. Let's just say their brand was compromised, and it's gonna be difficult for them to switch that idea in our minds where that we esteem them highly again, because they proved to us that there are people who what they say is not what they do. And as a brand, the worst place you want to be is where you say you are something and then you do not do it, because now people start to resent you, and they will actually become evangelists against you. They will go out there and tell people, hey, don't work with such and such or this business, because they're not the right business to work with.
Exactly. To not compromise your brand, live your values, preach and practice. Don't preach and don't practice. It's very important to build that consistency you're looking for. I mean, Joe, you've said it in the past that one of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs is access to the right information that will scale up their business, move them to the level they are, to a higher level, and also for long-term profitability. But I'm wondering, we have access to the internet more than ever, wide array of information available. So why are entrepreneurs still finding it difficult to get the right information to build a better brand? Why is that?
Because you don't know what you don't know. You almost, you have to be presented with something to be able to know that you didn't know it. There's a lot of information, but if you don't know what to look for, you will never find it. So, and I think that's kind of what inspired me to start my page, because in that way, I can now bring it to your attention. Oh, there is this thing. And now you can be aware that, oh, there's actually a thing that's called branding, and this is actually how it works. Because prior to that, you didn't know. You saw it every day, but you didn't know what you were seeing. But now that you have someone that can tell you, hey, so the reason why you always see Coca-Cola billboards, it's not because they have a lot of money to spend. It's because they know that the more they train you to see them, the more they cement themselves in your mind, and their brand is always going to be part and parcel of who you are. So now when you're looking at a Coca-Cola billboard, when you know that they're actually the smartest people ever. You don't think that they're wasting money, because as a young entrepreneur, you think they just have big budgets and they can spend them. But for their survival, it is essential for them to have that brand recognition. So they always constantly have those billboards out there. So, but that is not information that you would know if you weren't looking for it. So you don't know what you don't know. There's a lot of information that is out there, but only when you know what to look for can you go and find the right information.
Definitely. That's quite true. Joe Mutuku is our guest on this episode of Against Gravity. We are talking building valuable brands and getting, to the final leg of our conversation. Joe, should brands always take a stand on socio-cultural and political issues and happenings in the world? We have issues like the Black Lives Matter, issues on voting rights, even sometimes inequality, equality. I remember the Gillette advert recently that was tackling toxic masculinity. They produce shaving sticks, but then in their advert, they wanted to tackle issues of toxic masculinity and deal with it. There was a lot of backlash from men who were like, focus on producing your sticks or shaving sticks and leave the other things out of it. As a branding expert, what would you advise your clients on taking stands when it comes to social cultural issues that are affecting their target audience and market?
I think that is a very good question. And I think the companies that end up on the wrong side of that are companies that have not really spent a lot of time understanding who they are and what they represent. Because if you have never at any point shown that that is a value that you hold as a business, all of a sudden you can't just have that value of understanding that Black people are people too and being an advocate for them. So the only companies that are able to exist in that environment are companies that have shown that even to their essence that they are the kind of people that have those things as values, as brand values, that they have constantly reiterated or talked about. So now it's not very strange when they start to talk about human rights or things like that. It's the same thing with, let's say, sustainability, right? So all of a sudden, if you're a company that was producing plastics, and then all of a sudden you're preaching sustainability, everyone can see through it, right? Because if you are a sustainability person from the get-go, you would have found a way to not use plastics. So, and you're almost like making your consumers feel like they're not smart by going out there and advocating for sustainability when you've never really been about sustainability. So, but a company like Tesla can come out and be like, hey, we're about sustainability, because from its essence, it has been about sustainability with the electric cars and stuff like that. So I think companies need to understand that you can only talk about values that align to what you have been aligning yourself with. If you talk about values that are outside of what you've been about, everyone is gonna see right through it, and you're gonna get backlash, and you're gonna end up damaging your brand as a process. So not everything that happens in the world is something for you to get in the bandwagon and use the hashtag because everyone else is using it. Sometimes it's not wise for your brand. If you are an entertainer and the only thing that people knew you for, or the only values that you always symbolized were in the realms of entertainment, now if you start to talk about human rights and things that are serious, people are probably gonna think that you're being fake, right? But if you are a person from the jump, even as an entertainer, you would still communicate those values. Hey, human rights is something that is core to who I am and what I believe in. Then it's gonna be easier when something happens and you're out there advocating for people to believe and know that you actually stand for what you're saying.
I agree, but don't forget there's cancel culture now. Sometimes when you're silent, people will keep hashtagging and tagging you, say something. Silence means you're on the side of the oppressor. Silence means you're on the side of the one who is perpetrating that particular type of violence or abuse. So companies also are scared of that backlash and they quickly release a statement to, state their stance. So
Mhm.
You'll be in the right books when history is made and history is being looked at as well.
Yeah, I think, okay, there are some things that most definitely you never want to be on the other side of it, but you have to be authentic. You don't do it because you're afraid of backlash. You do it because it's the right thing to do. If you're doing it because of backlash, then don't do it in the first place. If you are a company that is, if you are Coca-Cola and then there is cancer, you can't talk about cancer. And yes, we know that you probably do wish that people didn't have cancer and you want to donate and do the best that you can. But if that's not you, because you're making an energy drink that isn't a healthy drink, then don't go out there and align yourself to a cancer organization, because it's not real. And people are gonna see right through it, that how can this company, that is a big company that sells a drink that isn't unhealthy, how can it align itself to an organization that wants to bring health to individuals? So if you're a company and you're doing things for to avoid a backlash, then I'm probably gonna call you a coward, because you don't have to. There are better ways. You as the CEO, you can come out and say, hey, I don't condone this, but don't attach that to the business, because it's not real. And people are gonna see right through it that it's not real.
All right, definitely stay real, stay true to whatever you've been preaching. Don't just jump on any bandwagon or trend to make your point heard. I mean, you have been speaking to so many entrepreneurs across Africa. What are some of the common mistakes when they are trying to build a brand? What challenges do you think they face when building valuable brands? You know, either from the get-go or midway.
I think one of the biggest challenge for most of them is they ignore it until it's too late, and then now they want to pay attention. And then the other thing is a lack of patience. So, and I tell this to a lot of entrepreneurs all the time, that you're not gonna see results quickly, because branding is like being in a relationship. You don't talk to a lady today, tomorrow you propose to them, and then next week you're at a church getting married, right? So branding is about being able to do very specific things consistently over time. And then now you start to get the rewards of your consistency, because now you have leverage. But because even in the relationship, the reason the girl liked you is because you consistently did things that made her trust you. You consistently did things that made her say, wow, this person is the person I should spend the rest of my life with. And now when they are bound to you, they're never gonna look at anyone else. So it's the same thing with your brand. You want to build such kind of a following that are so connected to you that they have no interest in looking anywhere else.
Oh, that's quite interesting. And I'm thinking, you personally, what are your top 3 favorite global brands of all time and why?
That is a difficult question. I think I'm starting to like a few startups. One of my favorite ones is called Polestar. Polestar is it's an electric car company. It's almost like Tesla, but it's smaller. I think it's one of my favorites right now. I'm gonna say there's a brand called Who Gives a Crap TP. You guys should go check it out. It's a toilet paper brand. Yes, it's a toilet paper brand, but they've been able to do it they've been able to build it in such an interesting way that it is amazing to see and exciting. So they've turned something that is very common and basic and made it into something very exciting and fun that I can tell you for a guarantee that the people that are buying that toilet paper are not buying it because they need toilet paper. They're buying it for something more because they believe in what those guys believe in. The third one, I'm gonna say a Kenyan one. There's a Kenyan brand here that's called Java. It's called Java House. And I'm gonna mention it because they are extremely consistent. If you walk into any Java house anywhere in the country, you're gonna have the same experience. You're gonna have the same experience with the food, with the culture, with the ambience. Everything is extremely the same. And I know that is very difficult to achieve. So I give props where it's due because I've seen these guys being able to maintain a level of consistency that I haven't seen in a lot of brands.
Oh, interesting. We should check them out right now and see what they're doing, that we can learn some best practices there. So those are the favorite global brands from Joe. Joe, on this show, we have the biggest Against Gravity moment. So Against Gravity is a challenge you're facing and you're able to overcome that challenge. So since beginning Crooked Space, since beginning, this industry journey over 9 years ago, what has been your biggest Against Gravity moment, your biggest challenge ever, and how were you able to surmount it? It could be professionally or personally.
First of all, as an entrepreneur, you face a lot of challenges. Yes, we've had a lot of challenges. I think I'm just gonna talk about the challenge outside of 2020 because I know probably everyone has a challenge with 2020. But I know we almost closed down our business at some point in 2018. It was a very dark, extremely dark time for me and the guys that we had in the team. We weren't landing any clients. Our pipelines were running out. Money was running out. Everything was extremely bad. I remember one time my co-founder came to my house and we had a very candid talk about, hey, this thing is probably not working out. We can probably kill it in employment because we have the talent. So maybe we want to go and do that for a while. And yeah, it got so bad. I think I was almost on the verge of depression. I had to even go back to my parents' house. I had to leave my apartment because I had dried up my savings. We had poured everything into the business. So it was bad. It was extremely bad. But then I usually call it a Jesus moment because it's not really something that we were expecting. Someone that was our business coach, which we had met in just few instances, he went and pitched a job for us, a really high ticket job that we got. The guy hired us without ever seeing us. We made a lot of money out of that deal. And this guy, he didn't know enough about us to vouch for us. So it was very strange that how can this guy go and pitch this high ticket job for us? And he doesn't even know enough about us. But we went in there, did our job, was extremely successful. Everyone was happy. And that kind of like was the CPR that we needed for our business to get back up again. And then things started to go, things started to pick up again. We started hiring, expanding our team and things like that. And it's even the thing that inspired me to do what I do in social media. It's almost like me paying it forward because someone did something to us that we don't feel like we deserved. I feel like it was the total Jesus moment. So that aspect of paying it forward and then hopefully the people that we impact being able to do the same can start a chain reaction that is gonna be beneficial to everyone.
Definitely quite an inspiring moment, and the bounce back is amazing. Sometimes there are people we call destiny helpers. They come in and then they change the game. I think that's what you
Yeah,
found. That's what you found.
yeah,
May we all find our destiny helpers in those dark times.
yeah.
Before my final question, I mean, COVID over the last close to 17 months has really changed a lot of industries. For the creative sector, for you personally, what are the lessons that you have learned from the COVID pandemic as a creative person?
I think the biggest thing I've learned is to be constantly evolving. As a creative and even as a business, our business looks very much different from how it looked at the beginning of 2020. A lot of entrepreneurs, the challenge that they ran into is just trying to stick with the same thing that has been working for them throughout the pandemic. And I think we were really smart is we almost like tried to innovate and shift strategies almost immediately when the pandemic happened, because we knew that if we want to still be in business, we need to be able to innovate and move with the times, because if we don't do that, we're going to be extinct and out of business. So I think that aspect of being able to evolve and not just because you did something and it worked and it made you very successful doesn't mean that you should keep doing that. Blockbuster is a good example. Kodak, all these companies, BlackBerry, they're not here today because they did something very well that worked, but they didn't want to do more. So always evolving and doing more has proven to help us.
Definitely, I agree. Joe Mutuku is my guest on Against Gravity. We've been talking building valuable brands. Now, Joe, my final question to you. I mean, what final words or tips will you give to any entrepreneur trying to build a valuable brand from scratch or to revive one? What should they focus on? Where should their head be to make this work?
Yeah, I think they should just adopt the mentality of playing the long game. Branding is going to give you leverage long term. So think of it as it's almost like insurance for your brand to be able to succeed long term, where you don't have to be competing with everyone else. So when things are difficult, just have patience and know that you just need to continue being consistent. And then those results, you start to see them over time. They're not going to come immediately. They're going to come over time. When I started my personal brand journey on Instagram, I didn't have any benefit for the whole year. And I wasn't really even looking to have a return on what I'm giving people for that whole year. It was just me consistently doing and giving value to others. And then it has ended up giving me leverage now, because now I can charge prices that I charge. Now I can do keynote talks that I wouldn't have been able to do if I didn't do that. So don't want quick results. Know that building a brand is gonna give you leverage long term. You just have to be consistent and keep going at it, and it's gonna pay off. Trust me. If it doesn't pay off, just come and tell me, "Hey, Joe, I tried what you said and it didn't pay off, and I am gonna apologize to the whole world and I was wrong."
All right. Thank you so much. Final words there from Joe Mutuku. He has a masterclass in branding that you should check out. Check out his Instagram page at Real Joe Mutuku. Real REAL Joe JOE Mutuku MUTUKU. Follow him, and then you can be part of the masterclass. He's going to coach you on how to build a brand of value and stand out. Thank you for joining us here on Against Gravity to talk building valuable brands. This has been a masterclass in itself. So I know if you're listening as an entrepreneur, you have so many tips, you've gathered so many ideas, wisdom that can help drive you. And thank you for being a part of this podcast. Thank you for listening. Don't forget, this podcast is brought to you by kind courtesy of Picture, your Afrocentric visual content provider. Get all images of Black people, Black communities, and use it to change the story and show the contemporary side of Black people. My name is Henry Devon. Thanks so much for being a part of it. Join us on our next episode here on Against Gravity. Bye for now.